From the Pep Radio Newsroom, these are the stories we are covering at this hour. Some Democrat voters in the United States have been looking to leave the country for the UK since Donald Trump's reelection. Michelle Call, 53 years old from Littleborough, Rochdale, who has been living in the United States since 1998, hopes to return home to the UK with her family due to concerns about the political climate under President Trump. Mrs. Call, who is a transgender child, says that following the Republican president's two sexes policy, she feels the U.S. is no longer a safe place for her family. Mr. Trump, who was sworn in as the 47th president of the United States on Monday, has already issued a number of executive orders that range from trade and immigration to U.S. foreign aid and civil rights. One of the orders includes the U.S. government defining gender as only male or female and rejecting a person's preferred gender identity or pronouns. We lived through a Trump presidency before, and we fought and we protested, Mrs. Call told the PA news agency from her home in Las Cruces, New Mexico. That time, we felt like it was right to stay and fight, but this time, we feel like we need to leave because we have a transgender child. They're 21 years old now, but they still live at home with us, and they're dependent on us. Mrs. Call described the two sexes policy as demoralizing and worrying. It's really hard to be here feeling that way, knowing that 50% of the people that I pass on the street think my child does not have a right to exist, she said. Mrs. Call and her husband Louis, 57 years old, who are both retired, plan to sell their home in Las Cruces and move to Littleborough, where she has several family members still living there. Brianne Reither, age 45 from Seattle, Washington, also hopes to move her family to the United Kingdom to escape another 4 years of crazy. Mrs. Reither says she has spent the last year trying to figure out how to move to the UK in the event that Mr. Trump would get reelected. Mrs. Reither, who has a non-binary daughter, says that since the inauguration, their move feels even more urgent. There's a lot of reasons why we all want to move, she told PA. My daughter is non-binary and is part of the queer community, and she doesn't want to be here anymore to get torn apart by any political actions that may happen. Trump made everything very black and white, very polarized. Mrs. Reither and her husband Richard, age 47, own an embroidery and custom clothing business and are looking into sole trader visas for the UK. I thought about political asylum. I thought about giving up my citizenship because honestly, I'm not attached to it, said Mrs. Reither. I've been saying for a year to all of my family, if he is president, we have to figure out how to get out of here. We can't do another 4 years of crazy. That sounds incredibly familiar. And now this news about the executive order denying birthright citizenship. A federal judge on Thursday temporarily blocked President Donald Trump's executive order denying U.S. citizenship to the children of parents living in the country illegally, calling it blatantly unconstitutional during the first hearing in a multi-state effort challenging the order. The 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution promises citizenship to those born on U.S. soil, a measure ratified in 1868 to ensure citizenship for former slaves after the Civil War. But in an effort to curb unlawful immigration, Trump issued the executive order just after being sworn in for his second term on Monday. The order would deny citizenship to those born after February 19th, whose parents are in the country illegally. It also forbids U.S. agencies from issuing any document or accepting any state document recognizing citizenship for such children. Trump's order drew immediate legal challenges across the country, with at least 5 lawsuits being brought by 22 states and a number of immigrants' rights groups. A lawsuit brought by Washington, Arizona, Oregon, and Illinois was the first to get a hearing. I've been on the bench for over 4 decades. I can't remember another case where the question presented was as clear as this one is, U.S. District Judge John Kofenauer told a Justice Department attorney. This is a blatantly unconstitutional order. Thursday's decision prevents the Trump administration from taking steps to implement the executive order for 14 days. In the meantime, the parties will submit further arguments about the merits of Trump's order. Kofenauer scheduled a hearing on February 6th to decide whether to block it long-term as the case proceeds. Kofenauer, age 84, a Ronald Reagan appointee who was nominated to the federal bench in 1981, grilled the Department of Justice attorney Brett Chernati, asking whether Chernati personally believed the order was constitutional. I have difficulty understanding how a member of the bar could state unequivocally that this is a constitutional order, he added. Chernati assured the judge he did, absolutely. He said the arguments the Trump administration is making now have never been previously litigated and that there was no reason to issue a 14-day temporary restraining order when it would expire before the executive order takes effect. The Department of Justice later said in a statement that it will vigorously defend the president's executive order, which it said correctly interprets the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. We look forward to presenting a full merits argument to the court and to the American people who are desperate to see our nation's laws enforced, the department said. The U.S. is among about 30 countries where birthright citizenship, the principle of jus soli, or right of the soil, is applied. Most are in Americas. Canada and Mexico are among them. The 14th Amendment, again, it was ratified in 1868 in the aftermath of the Civil War to ensure citizenship for former slaves and free African Americans. And it states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. And it should be pointed out that this did not include indigenous Americans until 1924, when President Calvin Coolidge signed into law the the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924. And even with passage of that act, Native Americans, indigenous Americans, did not have the right to vote automatically. That varied state by state, and it took until the 1960s to accomplish that. So if you think for even a minute that this is going to be a very quick battle, it isn't. We're in this for the long haul. And for more information about these stories, be sure to click the links on the PEP Radio page on the Pennsylvania Equality Project website, paequality.com. Be sure to download the Live 365 app to take PEP Radio with you wherever you go. For PEP Radio News, I'm David Moore. Now back to more music here on PEP Radio.